Good evening, adventurers. In tonight's tale, we will follow our author into a game of Rime of the Frost Maiden, so be cautious of potential spoilers. In the game, our writer stumbles into the den of a dungeon master who sees fit to lead the party with their own DMPC, whilst also seemingly DMing an adventure that they haven't actually read at all. Also, our player is ostracised for making a human character. Let's get into it. Tonight's tale is called Lazy Furry DM Spoils Icewind Dale, Part 1, Farts, Boredom and Avalanches. I was temporarily off of work due to the 2020 shutdowns, and I was looking for something to kill some time. I went on Roll20 and found a group for Rime of the Frost Maiden right when the module came out. They'd recently lost a member for some reason and were looking to find a new player as they were a few levels in. Excited to dive into something new, I put in an application. To my excitement, the DM messages me right away and asks me to cook up a character with a backstory with plenty of hooks. My character was a human nobleman Pact of the Blade warlock, the ambitious youngest son of a wealthy noble family. He was constantly looked down on by his stronger elder brothers. Knowing he'd never surpass their skills as warriors on his own, he started turning to mystical sources looking for an edge. He ended up falling in with an elite dueling club with religious undertones, promising him untold power if he would dedicate himself to their inner mysteries. Young and foolish, he got in deeper and deeper with the cult, until he ended up being coerced into pledging his soul to their god. Surprise, it turned out the being they worshipped was actually a devil looking to corrupt members of the nobility into the service of the Nine Hells. Luckily for him, my character was smart enough to get an escape clause written into his contract. If he would pull off a service for the devil, he'd be freed from his obligation to it. The devil, having no intention of letting him go and wanting to make an example of him to the other souls that he'd conned, tasked him with retrieving a long-lost artifact located somewhere in Icewind Dale. Despite it being an obvious suicide mission, my warlock set himself to the task and travelled north. Not the most original backstory, but I figured it had enough plot hooks in it to make it juicy. The favour for my patron could easily be tied into whatever dungeons were in the Dale, and there were potential for enemies in the form of other cultists looking to get out of the deal, or bounty hunters sent by my family to take me home. Lots of fun stuff that could be brought to a sandbox campaign. The DM seemed sold on the idea, and agreed I'll be arriving in Icewind Dale on a ship and waiting for word from my patron for the next steps in repaying my debt. The town would be the next stop the party would be visiting on their journey, so I'd be able to bump into them and get started. I show up for the first session, eager to see how my character story gets weaved into the narrative. Too bad, absolutely none of my work ended up being used. First session starts. Two things happen right off the bat that set me on edge. I find out the party's de facto leader is a DMPC, who just so happens to have the DM's name and be his avatar image. This is the sort of thing most stories on this subreddit are made out of. But the game literally just started, and I had nothing better to do, so I told myself I was being judgmental and decided to give him a chance. I'd seen DMPCs done well before. The second thing that sets me on edge, everyone in the group is a furry. Now, I have absolutely nothing against any group of people, but the culture of the group had me put off almost immediately. As I described my character walking into the inn the party was at, someone immediately interrupts me. Why is he human? I'm sorry, what? Why is he human? This is D&D, dude. You can be literally anything you want, and the best you could come up with is a human. I'm meeting the group for the first time, and the first thing they're doing is insult me for my character choice. I bite my tongue and explain that the character I'm playing is a nobleman from a human city in the Forgotten Realms. For him to be some sort of anthro dog man would make absolutely no sense. Anyway, I'm branded the token human of the group. Already feeling more than a bit like an outsider and the butt of the joke, I go ahead and make my in-character introduction, offering my services as an extra blade during a Yeti hunt. I'm told I can't come with them yet. Wait, why? From my verbal description of them, the group decides that the clothes I've described don't sound warm enough for Icewind Dale. The DMPC agrees, and since he's the group's leader, that's that. Apparently my nobleman was too stupid and poor to have packed proper clothes for the Arctic before taking a several-week-long trip to get there. Okay, how much money? Let's just trade up and we can go. Oh no. The whole party wants to come and get their own things, so the DM RPs the store owner for an obnoxiously long amount of time. So we end up going to the shop, and I made use all of my starting cash and agreed to do unspecified future favours for the shopkeeper before he finally sells the set I need. And this is after haggling. Nearly an hour into the session, all I've managed to do is not just go broke, but get into debt to yet another shady guy. Absolutely riveting. No wonder they lost their last player, who they ridiculed multiple times for having raised these complaints, and then daring to quit on them. The quest itself is pretty straightforward once we get into it. Go out and kill a yeti hiding in a cave at the top of a mountain. Except one thing. The DM claims that the book says we're supposed to be joined by a party of NPCs looking to kill the monster too. The DM, who has a very tired and droning sounding voice, except for when he's aggravated, sounds more and more bored as he's introducing these characters. Suddenly, he goes quiet and then asks us to roll a dexterity check. Okay. A massive avalanche suddenly comes out of nowhere and almost sends us flying off the mountain. I barely make my save. The NPC of course makes his off screen, but a good portion of the party is already wounded and back at the bottom of the mountain. We're told all the NPCs were caught in the path of the avalanche and killed. I actually get interested again at this point. Wow, was this part of the new module? These random events that could seriously wound the party? Something that showcases the cruelty and danger of the harsh wilderness? No. While we were all trying to regroup, he let slip his true reasons, while in general being whiny about how the dice weren't fair to the rest of the party. He got halfway through introducing his NPCs when he decided controlling them on top of doing the upcoming encounter was too complicated and boring. So, it just worked better if they were dead. Why not just retcon them away? Same reason I had to roleplay getting scammed by a shopkeeper for nearly half an hour. He was dedicated to realism. The lazy arse almost TPK'd us because he didn't want to have to do the extra work of controlling additional characters, and then whined about luck when he failed to consider if his assful of a solution was something the party could survive. The actual Yeti fight was pretty straightforward. There were 5 of us, and there were only 2 monsters. Apparently that's an okay number for him to be bothered with playing, other than his brave, handsome, muscle-bound were polar bear. We ended the session not long after that, but a few miscellaneous gems happened, particularly close to the end. He was pretty passive-aggressive with me for the entire session after the avalanche. We'd found the Yeti's cave, and the Tabaxi Ranger wanted to do some investigation to see if she could find this thing and have us sneak up on it. The DM goes quiet, and then asks for her to roll. She rolls high. Okay, you find something. What do I find? Traces of Yeti. Yeah, what kind of trace? Where is it? Well, it's the kind of trace you could hear it or you could smell it, is the utterly baffling reply. It's clear he just doesn't want to tell us where he's hidden the monster in this cave, so it can jump us. I decided to break the awkward tension with a joke. Is it a fart? Everyone got a good laugh, except our glorious anthro polar bear leader. For the rest of the session, whenever he hears a stray noise over my mic while someone else is talking, he angrily stops everything to call me out for cutting people off, making me apologise before we can continue. Him and his buddies making fun of me for being the token human is fine, but a single joke at his expense and nuclear war is declared. He seems to sense our displeasure with the cop-out of the avalanche, because on the way down the mountain, he lets us check where the bodies fell. Miraculously, they were fine. Or at least they were all alive enough that we could take them all back to town with us, on the back of the Tabaxi's pet bison, Appa. Yeah. So by the end, it's pretty clear to me why they're having trouble keeping players. I felt a bit bummed for having wasted my time, but was also morbidly curious where we'd go from here. I was also curious why the other party members tolerated him. So I decided to come back for the next session to see what happened later, when we had some more chances to interact outside a mini dungeon crawl. Maybe because he tolerated their more unusual moments. That, coupled with his trend of being actually so lazy he doesn't even bother trying to be subtle or tell a story. Both of these worsened heavily during the second session, and it is actually why I quit the campaign. But that's for another time. And there we have part 1 of this tale. I don't really stand for ostracising someone for their choice of character, especially over the race they have chosen. That just seems particularly unsavoury to me. That and the DMPC would have been enough for me, so I really don't know how our player managed to continue down the rabbit hole on this one. The DMPC being a werebear really takes the biscuit here as well. I'm actually quite fond of using DMPCs rarely, as I feel when done right they can really bring the group together. But for me, the number one rule here is that the DMPC cannot be stronger than the party that they are with, let alone stronger than the entire party combined. I don't know, what do you guys think? Is there a right way to use DMPCs, or are they just a total no-go? Have you played in a game with a DMPC? How did it go? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the content, please take a second to like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate your continued support. That's all I have for this evening. Stay tuned for part 2. Good night.